The Mercenary Guild's Grand Hall was packed. Every major mercenary in the sector had come to hear about the failed hunts. The massive room buzzed with conversation. Rumors had spread quickly. Some said Jinho's team had gone mad on an ice planet. Others said Tai-hyun had been beaten by a single human. No one knew the full truth yet. The Guildmaster, an ancient creature that had lived for centuries, called for silence. The room quieted instantly. Everyone wanted answers. Jinho stood first. He looked different from the cocky young pilot who had left the station weeks ago. His confidence was gone. His voice was quiet and serious. He told them everything. The chase on Thesser 7, the 5 days running through ice storms, watching his team break down one by one. The human who never stopped, never slowed, never showed fear. The hall remained silent as he spoke. Some mercenaries looked skeptical. Others looked worried. When Jinho finished, he sat down heavily. His hands were still shaking slightly. Tae-hyun stood next. The veteran warrior described his perfect trap in the canyons of Krath. How it had all fallen apart. How the human had turned the hunt around. How mercenaries had been picked off one by one. How he had finally let the human go rather than face what would come next. Some mercenaries called out angrily. They couldn't believe these stories. One human against experienced hunting teams? Impossible. It had to be lies or exaggerations. Then Bora stepped forward. She activated the holographic displays around the hall. Data filled the air. Evolution charts. Historical records. Military reports. She explained persistence hunting. She showed footage from Earth of humans running down prey over days. She presented evidence of the failed invasion 30 years ago. The hall grew quieter as mercenaries studied the data. This was real. This was documented. Humans really did have this ability. They really had broken an invasion force through nothing but endurance. Then Hwan stood. The legendary #1 mercenary walked to the center of the hall. Every eye was on him. He reached up and removed his helmet before the entire assembly. Gasps and shouts filled the hall. A human face. Hwan was human. The top-ranked mercenary in the entire galaxy was human. It seemed impossible, but there he stood. Undeniable proof. "I am human," Hwan said in his natural voice. It carried clearly through the hall. "I have been a member of this guild for 30 years. I reached the top rank not through superior strength or speed, but through persistence, through patience, through never giving up. Human qualities." He walked slowly around the center of the hall, looking at the assembled mercenaries. "I warned you. I told you that humans must not be chased, but warnings are meaningless without understanding. So Earth arranged a demonstration. Captain Dae-jin volunteered to show you what happens when you hunt a human. He didn't use weapons. He didn't use advanced technology. He just ran. And by running, he broke 2 of your best hunting parties. This is an outrage." Someone shouted from the crowd. "Earth manipulated us. They made us look weak." Hwan nodded. "Yes, they did. Because you needed to learn. You needed to understand that humans are not prey. We're not weak. We're not easy targets. We're persistence hunters. We evolved to chase prey until it died of exhaustion. That's what we are. That's what we'll always be." More shouts erupted. Some mercenaries called for retaliation against Earth. Others demanded the guild refuse any deals. The hall descended into chaos. The guildmaster raised one ancient appendage. Silence returned gradually. "We will vote," the master said. "Should we accept Earth's message and add humans to our protected list? Or should we show them that this insult will not stand?" Jinho stood immediately. "I vote to accept. I saw what one human can do. I don't want to see what a planet full of them can do. My entire team agrees with me. We will not vote for conflict with Earth." Tae-hyun rose more slowly. His forearms hung at his sides. "I spent my whole career believing strength was everything. That superior force always wins. But I learned something in those canyons. Warfare isn't just about weapons and muscles. It's about will. About who can keep going when everyone else stops. Humans have that. They have it in ways we can't match. I vote to accept Earth's terms." One by one, mercenaries began voting. Some voted out of fear, some out of pragmatism, some out of respect for what they had learned. But slowly the votes added up. By the end, it was unanimous. The guild would accept. Humans would be added to the protected list. No contracts involving human targets would be accepted. 2 weeks later, an Earth delegation arrived at the guild station. Captain Dae-jin led them. He looked relaxed and healthy. showing no signs of his week-long chases. With him were diplomatic officials and military advisors. The negotiations were surprisingly friendly. Earth didn't demand tribute or submission. They offered to share training methods. They would teach interested mercenaries about endurance, about persistence, about the mental techniques that allowed humans to push past normal limits. In exchange, the guild would work with Earth on contracts that benefited both sides. Several mercenaries, including Tai Hyun, signed up for the training programs. They wanted to learn. They wanted to understand how humans did what they did. Jin-ho took a different path. He left the guild temporarily and returned to his home world. He started teaching what he had learned. He became an advocate for endurance training in his species' military. He told everyone about the human who taught him that true strength isn't about quick victories. It's about the ability to keep going when everything tells you to stop. Bora expanded her information network to include Earth contacts. She became the main connection between the guild and human intelligence services. She developed great respect for human patience and long-term planning. Working with them taught her new ways to think about problems. Taehyun changed the most. Training with Earth's military instructors was the hardest thing he had ever done. Not because of physical difficulty, but because it challenged everything he believed about warfare. He learned to value persistence over power, patience over aggression, strategy over strength. When he returned to the guild, he was still formidable. But now he understood that power comes in many forms. Hwan continued his work as always. But now he worked without his helmet. His human face became familiar to everyone in the guild. He became a bridge between Earth and the mercenary community. He showed that humans could succeed anywhere if they used their natural advantages wisely. Captain Dae-jin returned to his work as a freighter captain. But his reputation preceded him everywhere. Young humans looked up to him as a hero. He had shown the galaxy that their species' unique qualities were valuable, that being human meant something special in a universe full of stronger, faster species. Years passed. The story of the hunt for Captain Dae-jin became legend in the Mercenary Guild. New recruits heard it during orientation. They learned about the warning that was ignored, about the hunt that became a nightmare, about the revelation that changed everything. The phrase became common among mercenaries. Humans must not be chased. It was used to describe any target that would cost more to pursue than they were worth. Any mission that would break your spirit before it broke your enemy. Throughout the galaxy, species began to understand Earth's lesson. In a universe of sprinters, the marathon runner had a unique advantage. In a galaxy of warriors who fought until they couldn't continue, the species that fought until the enemy couldn't continue held a terrifying edge. Earth watched and waited patiently. They had proven their point without firing a shot. They had earned respect without demanding it. They had shown that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't in their technology or their numbers. It was in their nature. The ability to persist when others would stop, to endure when others would break, to keep moving forward no matter what stood in their way. 50 years later, a young mercenary stood in the guild hall. He looked at the contract board and saw a bounty on a human smuggler. Good money, easy target, or so it seemed. An older mercenary, scarred and experienced, placed a hand on the youngster's shoulder. I wouldn't take that one. Why not? The pay is excellent, the veteran smiled sadly. Because humans must not be chased, trust me. Some lessons the galaxy only needs to learn once. If you chase a human, you better be prepared to chase them forever, because they will never stop running. And if you follow long enough, you'll discover that you're not the hunter anymore. You're the prey. The young mercenary looked at the contract one more time. Then he walked away. The message had been passed down through generations. The warning lived on. In a quiet corner of the guild hall, an elderly human mercenary watched this exchange. He nodded in approval. The lesson had taken root. The galaxy now understood. Earth's demonstration had succeeded not because they won a war, but because they didn't have to fight one. They proved their point through persistence, through patience, through the simple act of never stopping. And the galaxy learned to respect not the strongest species or the fastest or the most technologically advanced, but the species that simply refused to quit. Humanity had shown the universe a fundamental truth. Violence is temporary. Technology can be matched. Strength can be overcome. But persistence? Persistence is forever. And in a galaxy where everyone else knew when to stop, humans were the ones who kept going. Always. Forever. Until the job was done. The warning echoed through the centuries. Jinho's damaged team arrived back at the Mercenary Guild station first. They limped off their ships looking like survivors of a war. Their eyes were haunted. Their hands shook. They didn't talk about what happened on Thessar 7. When other mercenaries asked questions, they just shook their heads and walked away. Taehyun's team arrived 2 days later. They looked no better. The proud veteran mercenary walked with his head down. His 4 arms hung limply at his sides. The 20 warriors he had hired refused to take payment. They just wanted to leave and forget everything that happened in those canyons. Word spread through the guild quickly. 2 of the most confident hunting parties had failed. Neither collected the 50 million credit bounty. Both came back broken and traumatized. Other mercenaries who had been preparing to hunt the human quietly canceled their plans. Bora called an emergency meeting in her office. She invited Jinho and Taehyun. Both men sat in her office looking tired and defeated. She shared everything she had discovered about human evolution, about persistence hunting, about the failed Earth invasion 30 years ago. Juan knew, she said. He tried to warn you, but there's more. She pulled up a file on her screen. I found something about Juan himself, his real identity. The file showed military records from the Earth invasion. One name appeared multiple times, a young mercenary named Juan who survived the entire campaign. He was there when millions of soldiers broke down psychologically. He saw what humans could do when hunted. After the invasion failed, he went to Earth, Bora explained. He trained with their military, learned their ways. Then he came back and joined our guild. He's been the top-ranked mercenary for 20 years. And he's never once taken a contract involving humans. Jinho's eyes widened. You're saying Juan knows humans personally? That he understands them? I'm saying more than that, Bora replied. I think Juan might be working with Earth. I think this whole contract might have been a setup. Before anyone could respond, the door opened. Juan stood in the entrance. His armored form filled the doorway. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Juan reached up and removed his helmet. For the first time in decades, he revealed his face to others. Beneath the armor was a human face, weathered and scarred, middle-aged, human. Juan wasn't an alien warrior at all. He was human. He had been human all along. The silence in the room was absolute. Jinho's mouth hung open. Taehyun stood up slowly, all 4 arms tensing. Bora's compound eyes focused intently on Juan's revealed face. My name is Juan, he said in his natural voice, no longer modulated by the helmet. I'm human. I was a young mercenary during the invasion of Earth 30 years ago. I fought on the invasion side. I watched what happened when the galaxy tried to hunt humanity. He walked into the room and sat down. His armor made scraping sounds against the chair. After the invasion failed, I was captured by human forces. But they didn't kill me. They offered me a choice, learn from them or spend the rest of my life in a prison cell. I chose to learn. Juan looked at each of them in turn. I trained with Earth's military for 5 years. I learned why humans are dangerous. It's not their strength or speed or technology. It's their patience. They're willing to play the long game in ways that make other species' lifespans look like brief moments. Earth let you become a mercenary? Taehyun asked. Why? Because they wanted someone in this position who understood them, Juan replied. Someone who could give warnings when needed. Someone who could demonstrate that humans can succeed anywhere, even in arenas dominated by physically superior species. I became the top-ranked mercenary not through strength, but through persistence and patience. Human qualities. So the contract was fake, Jinho said quietly. This was all a test. Juan nodded. Captain Dae-jin volunteered for this mission. The technology he supposedly stole was returned weeks ago through diplomatic channels. Earth purchased the contract through intermediaries. They wanted to remind the galaxy why humans are dangerous. They wanted to show what happens when you chase them. Bora leaned back in her chair. It was a demonstration. A message. Yes, Juan confirmed. Earth has been watching the Mercenary Guild. They've seen how you operate, how you hunt species to extinction for money, how you chase targets across multiple systems without considering consequences. They decided it was time to teach a lesson. Taehyun's violet scales darkened with anger. So we were played. Used as examples. You were warned, Juan said calmly. I stood in the guild hall and told everyone, humans must not be chased. But warnings only work if people listen. Sometimes the lesson must be learned the hard way. Jinho put his head in his hands. We lost good mercenaries on Thessar 7. They'll never be the same. The psychological damage is permanent. No one died, Juan pointed out. That was part of the demonstration. Humans could have killed you all easily. Captain Dejin is trained military, not just a freighter captain. He's an expert in survival and evasion. He could have eliminated your teams at any point. But Earth doesn't want to kill. They want understanding. They want respect. What happens now? Bora asked. Will Earth demand something from the guild? Juan shook his head. They want a new relationship. Not enemies. Not allies. Just mutual respect. They'll share some training methods with mercenaries who want to learn. In exchange, the guild will reject contracts that target humans or human interests. And if the guild refuses, Taehyun asked. Juan's expression became serious. Then Earth will demonstrate again. But next time, it won't be just one human leading mercenaries on week-long chases. It will be coordinated operations across multiple systems, psychological warfare on a scale the galaxy has never seen. Humans are very, very good at the long game. They're patient enough to wait decades, generations, however long it takes. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. Earth wasn't threatening war. They were threatening something worse, an endless campaign of persistence and patience that would slowly break any opposition. There will be a guild assembly tomorrow, Bora said. Everyone will want answers about what happened, about the failed hunts. What should we tell them? Juan stood and put his helmet back on. Tell them the truth. Tell them about persistence hunting. Tell them about human evolution. Tell them about the invasion that failed 30 years ago. And tell them that the top-ranked mercenary in the galaxy is human. That should be message enough. He walked to the door, then paused. I tried to warn you. I told you, humans must not be chased. Not because you can't catch them, but because by the time you do, you'll be so changed by the chase that you'll wish you never started. They don't defeat you with weapons. They defeat you with exhaustion, with despair, with the slow realization that they will never stop, never quit, never surrender. After Juan left, the three of them sat in silence. Jinho broke it first. I believe him, I saw it. That human on Thessar 7 could have run for another month, maybe longer. I've never seen anything like it. Taehyun nodded slowly. The canyons. He knew every path, every hiding spot. He had planned everything. He wasn't running away. He was executing a strategy, and it worked perfectly. Bora pulled up more data on her screens. I'm finding reports from other sectors. Over the past 30 years, every major conflict involving humans has ended with humans winning. Not through superior force, through persistence. They outlast everyone. They adapt faster. They never give up, so what do we do? Jinho asked. Taehyun stood up, all four arms stretching. Tomorrow at the assembly, I'll vote to accept Earth's terms. I'll recommend that humans be added to the protected list. No contracts against them. No hunts, no chases. Because Juan was right. Some prey is too dangerous to hunt. Jinho nodded in agreement. I'll vote the same way. My team won't speak against it either. They know what happened out there. Bora saved all her research files. I'll present the evidence. The evolution data. The invasion records, everything. The guild needs to understand what they're dealing with. Not a weak species, not easy prey, but possibly the most dangerous species in the galaxy when you make them your enemy. The meeting ended. Each of them left to prepare for tomorrow's assembly. The word would spread quickly. The legendary Juan was human. The failed hunts were a demonstration. And the galaxy's most feared mercenary guild was about to learn a new kind of fear. The fear of a species that never stops coming. Jinho's hunting pack arrived at Thessar 7 3 days after leaving the guild station. The ice moon glowed white in the darkness of space. Temperatures on the surface dropped to minus 150 degrees. Winds could tear metal apart. It was a terrible place, home to only a few hundred people who worked at Asmal Trading Post. The pack consisted of 12 experienced hunters from different species. They had ships, weapons, thermal scanners, and motion detectors. They landed their vessels around the trading post in a careful formation. No one could escape without being seen. Jinho looked through his scope at the main docking area. There, loading supplies onto his old freighter, was Captain Dae-jin. The human looked ordinary. He was about 180 centimeters tall. He wore a worn flight jacket and work boots. His hair was dark. His movements were calm and steady as he carried boxes into his ship. Jinho smiled. This would be even easier than he thought. The human had no idea they were coming. "We move in now," he said into his communicator. "Surround the dock. Block all exits. We take him alive and collect the full 50 million. His team moved into position. They approached from different angles, weapons ready. The frozen ground crunched under their boots. The wind howled around them, but their environmental suits protected them from the cold. Then Captain Dae-jin looked up. His eyes met Jin-ho, across the ice field. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Jin-ho expected to see fear in those human eyes, terror, panic. But instead he saw something else. Something that made him uncomfortable. The human looked sad, almost sorry. The human's voice came through their communication channels. How he accessed their frequency, Jin-ho didn't know. "I am sorry you came here," Dae-jin said quietly. His voice was calm, steady, not the voice of a frightened man. Then he ran, not toward his ship, not toward the trading post where he might find help. He ran straight into the howling ice storm that raged beyond the settlement. He ran into a frozen wasteland where nothing should survive. Jin-ho laughed. "He's panicking. Chase him down. He won't." To last an hour in that storm, the hunting pack pursued. They had thermal imaging that could see heat signatures through the storm. They had ships overhead for support. They had environmental suits rated for extreme conditions. The human had nothing but a survival pack and the clothes on his back. For the first 6 hours, everything seemed normal. They tracked the human, his heat signature across the ice plains. He moved at a steady pace. Not sprinting, not stopping, just moving. Jin-ho's team closed the distance slowly. They were being careful not to exhaust themselves. But they were confident. Soon they would have him. After 12 hours, something started to feel wrong. The human was still moving at the same pace. He slowed down. He stopped to rest. Jin-ho checked his own team. 3 of them were falling behind. Their suits struggled with the extreme cold. Their species weren't built for extended activity in these conditions. "He has to stop soon," Jin-ho said. "No one can keep this up forever." But the human didn't stop. Hour 18, hour 20, hour 24. A full day passed. The human kept moving, always moving, never stopping. Jin-ho's confidence began to crack. His own legs ached. His muscles screamed forest. He had to stop several times to catch his breath. But every time he checked his scanner, that heat signature was still moving, still maintaining the same steady pace. On the second day, they got close enough to see him through the storm. Captain Dae-jin was jogging across the ice. His breath came out in steady clouds, but he wasn't gasping. He wasn't stumbling. He looked like he could run for another week. The most disturbing thing, when he glanced back at his pursuers, he didn't look frightened. He looked focused, determined, like a man with a plan. By the third day, Jin-ho's team was down to 9 members. 3 had collapsed from exhaustion and been evacuated to the ships. The remaining hunters were struggling. They had superior technology, better equipment, stronger bodies. But none of it seemed to matter. Meanwhile, thousands of light years away, Taehyun was setting his trap. He adduced Bora, this intelligence network, to predict where the human would go next. The data showed that Captain Dae-jin had family connections to a colony on the planet Krath. It was a desert world with deep canyon systems, perfect for an ambush. Taehyun arrived at Krath with 20 hired mercenaries. He set up seismic sensors throughout the canyon systems. He positioned drones overhead. He blocked every exit with armed guards. When the human arrived, there would be no escape. He was confident. He had been a mercenary for decades. He had hunted creatures far more dangerous than one human. This trap would work. Then reports started coming in from Jin-ho's team on Thesor 7. Taehyun read them with growing disbelief. The human had been running for 3 days straight. He showed no signs of stopping. Half of Jin-ho's team was out of action. For the first time, Taehyun felt doubt whisper in his mind. What if one? His warning had been serious. Back on Thesor 7, the situation was getting worse. Jin-ho fell into a crevasse while trying to keep up with the human. His suit was damaged. 2 team members had to help him back to the ships. That left only 6 hunters still chasing the target, and still the human ran. On the 4th day, Jin-ho lay in his ship's medical bay. His legs were covered in bandages. His body was exhausted. Through the ship, Sensors, he watched that heat signature continue to move across the ice. That's when understanding hit him like a physical blow. The human wasn't running away from them. He was leading them. He was choosing the path. He was in control. He was hunting them. At the Mercenary Guild station, Bora made a discovery. She had been researching human evolution and history. What she found made her blood run cold. Humans weren't the apex predators because they were strong. They were apex predators because of something called persistence hunting. Before they developed technology, humans on Earth would chase their prey for days, not fast enough to catch it immediately, but never stopping. Never giving up, the prey would sprint away, exhausting itself. The human would follow at a steady pace, always tracking, always coming. The prey would rest, thinking it was safe. Then the human would appear again on the horizon. This would continue for days until the prey's heart gave out from stress and exhaustion. Humans evolved to run in heat that would kill most species. They evolved to cool themselves through sweating, allowing continuous movement without overheating. They evolved to track prey using pattern recognition and intelligence. And most terrifying of all, they evolved to never give up, never stop, never quit. Bora sent emergency messages to both hunting parties. She tried to warn them, but it was too late. They were already committed to the chase. And once you started chasing a human, you couldn't stop, because they would never stop running. On the 5th day on Thessar 7, Jinho made the hardest decision of his career. He called off the hunt. His remaining team members were suffering from frostbite, exhaustion, and psychological breakdown. 2 of them were hallucinating, seeing the human everywhere, hearing his footsteps in every gust of wind. As they limped back to their ships, Jinho looked back one final time. Through the storm, he saw a figure standing on a ridge, Captain Dae-jin. The human stood perfectly still, watching them retreat. He wasn't breathing hard. He looked fresh, ready to run for another week if needed. Then the human turned and disappeared into the white wilderness, and Jinho understood the most disturbing truth of all. The human could have lost them any time he wanted. He had been leading them in circles, wearing them down, teaching them a lesson. Jinho sat in his ship as it lifted off from Thessar 7. His hands were shaking, not from cold, from fear, because now he understood this warning. Humans must not be chased, not because you can to catch them, but because by the time you realize what is happening, it's already too late. You are not the hunter anymore. You are the prey. Taehyun waited in the canyons of Krath. Red dust covered everything. The sun beat down with burning heat. His 20 hired mercenaries were positioned at every exit. Drones circled overhead. Seismic sensors covered every approach route. The trap was perfect. He had studied Jinho's failure. He understood the mistake now. Jinho had tried to chase the human. That was wrong. You don't chase. You ambush, you trap. You use overwhelming force in one quick strike. No long pursuits. No extended hunts. Fast and clean. Captain Dae-jin's ship entered orbit around Krath exactly as Bora's intelligence predicted. Taehyun smiled with satisfaction. The human was following a predictable pattern. He was heading toward a colony where he had family connections. It made sense. When prey runs, it runs toward safety. The human's ship descended toward the planet. It landed in the canyon system, right in the middle of Taehyun's trap. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Captain Dae-jin emerged from his ship. Taehyun watched through his scope. The human carried only a small pack. Scanners showed no weapons, no armor, just basic survival gear. The human looked tired. His clothes were dusty and worn. Good. Maybe the chase on Thessar 7 had weakened him. Taehyun let the human walk deep into the canyon system. He wanted him far from the ship, far from any escape route. When Dae-jin was exactly where Taehyun wanted him, the mercenary gave the signal. Metal doors slammed shut over every canyon exit. Drones descended from the sky. 20 armed mercenaries moved in from all directions. Taehyun himself walked forward, his forearms holding advanced weapons. They had the human surrounded, trapped. Finally, Captain Dae-jin stopped walking. He turned to face Taehyun. The human didn't look surprised. He didn't look afraid. He studied Taehyun for a moment, then nodded. It was a strange gesture, almost respectful, like someone acknowledging a worthy opponent. Then he ran, not toward the exits. Those were sealed. He ran deeper into the canyon maze. He moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he was going. Tae-hyun cursed and gave chase. His mercenaries followed. They had numbers. They had weapons. They had technology. The human had nothing. This chase would be short, but it wasn't short. The human knew the terrain perfectly. He took paths that seemed impossible. He climbed sheer walls that shouldn't support his weight. He leaped across gaps that looked too wide. He navigated through maze-like passages in the growing darkness without any visible light source. Hours passed. The sun set. The canyon temperatures dropped from burning heat to freezing cold. Tae-hyun's mercenaries began to struggle. They had night vision equipment, but the human seemed to see better. He moved through the darkness like he owned it. On the second day in the canyons, Tae-hyun realized his team was spread out across dozens of kilometers. The narrow passages had forced them to split up. He couldn't see the human anymore. The heat signature kept disappearing behind rock formations. Then the drones started going down. One by one they fell from the sky. Tae-hyun reviewed the footage. Each drone had been hit by precisely thrown rocks during low passes through the narrow canyons. The accuracy was impossible, but it was happening. Then mercenaries started disappearing. Not dying, disappearing. One moment they were reporting in. The next moment static. When teams found them, they were unconscious. Their weapons were gone. Their equipment was missing. No wounds, no signs of struggle, just efficiently neutralized. Tae-hyun felt a cold realization settle over him. The human wasn't being hunted. The human was hunting. Somehow, impossibly, Captain Dae-jin had turned this entire situation around. He was picking off mercenaries one by one. By the third day, Tae-hyun's force was down from 20 to 8. The others weren't dead, but they might as well be. They were traumatized, babbling, talking about the human who appeared from nowhere, who moved like a ghost, who knew where they would be before they knew themselves. Tae-hyun himself was exhausted. His 4 powerful arms meant nothing when he was too tired to lift them. His superior strength meant nothing when he couldn't catch his target. All his experience, all his victories, all his confidence meant nothing against an enemy who fought by simply never stopping. Back at the guild station, Bora was making more discoveries. She found classified military records from 30 years ago, records about an invasion of Earth. Multiple species had attempted to conquer the planet. They thought it would be easy. Humans had barely achieved spaceflight. They had no advanced weapons. It should have been a simple conquest, but it wasn't. The invasion force consisted of millions of soldiers from dozens of species, the best warriors the galaxy had to offer. They landed on Earth expecting quick victory. The humans didn't fight a normal war. They ran. They led the invaders into deserts where the heat killed, into jungles where disease waited, into frozen tundras where cold destroyed, into mountains where altitude sickness struck. They used Earth's environment as a weapon. The campaign that should have lasted weeks dragged on for years. The psychological impact on the invasion force was catastrophic. Soldiers spoke of never being able to rest, of being tracked endlessly, of humans who could march for days without stopping, who survived in conditions that killed everyone else, who treated warfare not as combat but as persistence hunting. The invasion was quietly called off. The records were sealed. The galaxy agreed to leave Earth alone, and one survivor of that campaign, a young mercenary who witnessed everything, eventually became known as Juan. Bora read this with growing horror. She immediately tried to contact Tae-hyun, but his communications were spotty in the deep canyons. Her warnings might arrive too late. On Krath, dawn broke on the 4th day. Tae-hyun finally cornered Captain Dae-jin in a box canyon. The human stood calmly against the rock wall. His remaining 8 mercenaries surrounded him, weapons raised. This was it. Finally. Tae-hyun got his first clear look at the human in days. Captain Dae-jin was covered in red dust. His clothes were torn. His face was weathered by sun and wind. But his breathing was steady. His eyes were clear and alert. He looked like he could run for another week without problem. "You can't win," Tae-hyun said, raising his weapons. "I have you trapped. Surrender now and I won't hurt you." Captain Dae-jin shook his head slowly, sadly. "No, you're the one who's trapped. You've been trapped since the moment you decided to chase me, because now you can't stop thinking about this. Every time you see a human, you'll remember. You'll remember running until your lungs burned and your legs screamed and your mind begged you to stop. And you'll remember that I never did. Taehyun's weapons wavered. He thought about Jinho's broken team, about his own exhausted mercenaries, about the stories Bora had found, about Hwan's warning that now made terrible sense. The human continued speaking. His voice was calm and educational, like a teacher explaining something important. If you chase us, we run. If you follow, we lead. If you persist, we persist longer. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the fastest or the smartest or the most advanced, but we're the most stubborn. In a universe where everyone else knows when to stop, we're the species that keeps going. Daejin turned toward the canyon wall. That's when Taehyun saw what he had missed. Hidden handholds carved into the rock. A climbing route invisible from below. The human had an escape route the entire time. He had never been trapped. Not once. You can shoot me if you want, the human said, beginning his climb. You have the weapons. But ask yourself, do you really want to be the mercenary who killed a human? Do you want Earth's attention? Do you want to see what humans do when they're not just teaching a lesson anymore? Taehyun lowered his weapons. He watched the human climb up the canyon wall with smooth, practiced movements. Within minutes, Captain Daejin disappeared over the rim and was gone. Taehyun stood in that box canyon for a long time. His mercenaries waited nervously. Finally, he spoke. Let him go. This hunt is over. As they made their way back to the ships, no one spoke. They were all thinking the same thing. Hwan had been right. Humans must not be chased, and they had learned exactly why. The mercenary guild station floated in deep space like a massive metal city. Inside the main hall, hundreds of alien warriors gathered around holographic screens. They came from every corner of the galaxy. Some had scales, some had fur, and some had bodies that looked nothing like any Earth creature. They were all here for one reason: money. Taehyun stood near the front of the crowd. He was a Krelton, a species known for their fighting skills. His violet scales caught the light as he moved. He had 4 powerful arms, each one strong enough to bend steel. Scars covered his body from 200 battles across the galaxy. Other mercenaries respected him. They feared him too. Next to him, Bora watched the screens with her compound eyes. She was a Vrix, an insect-like creature who could see things others missed. She ran the guild's information network. If you needed to know something, Bora could find it. She noticed everything and forgot nothing. A young Deltan pilot named Jinho pushed through the crowd. His blue skin marked him as an amphibious species. He was new to the guild and wanted to make a name for himself. He talked loud and laughed louder. The older mercenaries rolled their eyes at his confidence. Suddenly, the main holographic board lit up. A new contract appeared. The crowd went silent as they read the details. 50 million credits for capturing one target. The target was a human freighter captain named Daejin. He had stolen valuable technology from a powerful corporation. The contract said they could bring him back alive for the full payment. If he resisted, they could use deadly force. The hall erupted with excited voices. Mercenaries shouted and pushed toward the board. They wanted to claim the contract first. 50 million credits could buy a fleet of ships. It could buy a small planet. It could set up a mercenary for life. Jinho laughed and slapped his leg. A human? This would be easy money. Everyone knew humans were weak. They came from some backwater planet far from the core worlds. They had no claws, no natural armor, no special abilities. Their home planet had such weak gravity that they could barely lift heavy objects. Taking down one human captain would be like hunting a child. Taehyun smiled with his forearms crossed. He had hunted dangerous prey across the galaxy. He had fought in wars that killed millions. One human running scared through space? He could do this alone, and keep all 50 million for himself. Bora pulled up information on her personal screen. She found records about Captain Daejin. The file showed a simple man. No military training, no special skills. Just a regular freighter captain who transported cargo between colonies. His ship was old and slow. He had no weapons worth mentioning. This really did look like easy money. Then a voice cut through the noise. It was deep and mechanical, coming from a helmet speaker. The entire hall fell silent. Every head turned toward the shadows at the back of the room. Juan stepped forward into the light. He wore full combat armor that covered every part of his body. No one had ever seen his face. No one even knew what species he was, but everyone knew his name. Juan was the #1 ranked mercenary in the entire galaxy. He had completed impossible missions. He had survived situations that killed entire teams. When Juan spoke, people listened. He had never spoken in the guild hall before, not once in all the years he had been a member. Now his voice filled the room. "I warn you, humans must not be chased." The words hung in the air like a threat. Some mercenaries shifted nervously. Others looked confused. A few laughed quietly. Tae-hyun's laugh was the loudest. He uncrossed his forearms and stepped forward. "The great Juan is afraid of a human. Look at the file. This creature is nothing special. Humans are weak. They have no claws to fight with. Their bones break easily. One good hit and they go down. Why should we fear them?" Other mercenaries nodded in agreement. They had heard stories about humans. Supposedly they came from a planet with such low gravity that they could barely function in normal environments. They had no natural weapons, no armor plating, no poison, no special abilities at all. They were prey animals at best. Juan's helmeted head turned slowly toward Tae-hyun. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made even the bravest warriors feel cold. "You may hunt this human if you wish. Take the contract. Chase him across the stars. But understand this. If you chase a human, you must be prepared to never stop chasing. Because they will never stop running. They will run through fire and ice. They will run through places that kill other species. And if you follow them long enough, you will discover why their species survived long enough to reach the stars." Tae-hyun waved his hand dismissively. "You speak in riddles, old warrior. Perhaps you have gone soft. Perhaps you have lost your edge. I have hunted the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. One human will not trouble me." Juan said nothing more. He simply turned and walked back into the shadows. His warning had been given. What the others did with it was their choice. Jinho gathered a group of 12 mercenaries around him. They would hunt as a pack and split the money. With that many hunters and their combined ships, the human couldn't possibly escape. They would corner him within days and collect their payment. Jinho was already planning how to spend his share. Tae-hyun decided to work alone. He didn't need help to catch one frightened human. He would use his experience and his contacts to predict where the target would run. Then he would set a trap and end this quickly. Easy money for a few days of work. Bora watched everything from her station. She found Juan's warning strange, very strange. She had access to every database in the guild. She started searching through old records. She discovered something interesting. Juan had never taken a contract involving humans. Not once in his entire career. Every other species, yes, but never humans. Why? She kept this information to herself for now. But her curiosity was burning. What did Juan know that the others didn't? Over the next hour, more than 30 mercenaries signed up for the hunt. They formed teams. They checked their weapons. They prepared their ships. The excitement in the hall was electric. 50 million credits was waiting for whoever caught Captain Daejin first. The guild's tracking system showed the human's last known position. He was near the frontier colonies, far from the core worlds. His ship had been spotted at several trading posts. He seemed to be moving randomly, trying to avoid detection. But you couldn't hide forever in space. There were only so many places to run. Jinho's team launched first, their ships blazing into the void. Tae-hyun left shortly after in his personal cruiser. Other hunting parties followed throughout the day. They were confident. They were excited. They saw only the money waiting at the end of this simple hunt. In the shadows of the guild hall, Juan watched them go. His armored form stood perfectly still. Through his helmet, no one could see his expression. But if they could, they would have seen sadness. These warriors had no idea what they were getting into. They thought they were the hunters. They would soon learn the terrible truth. Bora continued her research, digging deeper into old files. Something about this situation felt wrong. Juan's warning echoed in her mind. Humans must not be chased, but why? What made humans different from any other prey species? She would find out. And when she did, she suspected the answer would change everything.